freue mich riesig, dass er da ist und ich freue mich riesig, dass wir diesen Abend auch hier wieder mit unseren Partnern der Avina Stiftung, UGZ, der Stadt Zürich und Tom Talent durchführen dürfen in Kooperation mit der Biodynamischen Ausbildung Schweiz. Sehr, sehr schön, dass Joel Salatin zu uns gekommen ist. Wir haben beim ersten Symposium einen Film gemacht mit ihm. Er war immer schon einer unserer Wunschkandidaten, ihn hier nach Zürich zu bringen, ist jetzt endlich geglückt. Heute Morgen hat er eine 4-stündige Masterclass gehalten. Er hat eigentlich seine zweitägige Ausbildung auf 4 Stunden zusammen geschweißt oder zusammen eingekocht. Jetzt macht er das Gleiche noch in einer Stunde. Wenn Sie da noch Fragen haben, geht es noch länger. Also freuen Sie sich auf eine gebündelte, konzentrierte, fantastische Präsentation von einem Wahnsinnsvorreiter der biodynamischen Szene. Und was ich Ihnen noch sagen möchte, wenn Sie den Übersetzungscode brauchen für Wordly, das heißt, wenn Sie Englisch lieber auf Deutsch lesen möchten auf Ihrem Telefon, dann gibt es da so Codes, die Sie abfotografieren können, Sprache wählen und die Artificial Intelligence wird auf Deutsch oder was auch immer übersetzen. Ich werde nicht mehr länger and welcome him with a warm round of applause, Joel Salatin. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's just a delightful privilege to be with you, to finally make this happen. We started discussing this in 2019, and a lot's changed in the world since 2019. And so it's a real delight and a privilege and an honor to be with you. I will speak a little bit slower than normal in order for translation to keep up and for those who struggle a little bit with the English to be able to keep up as well. I will try to leave about 15 minutes for questions at the end, and we will get going. So, regenerative agriculture in a nutshell. Number one is the next generation clamoring to join you on your farm? Number two, is your farm generating 2 salaries from 2 different generations? That's it. That's it in a nutshell. No. Those are not, you can say they're not related to the soil, but those are my really nutshell definitions. It really revolves around, is what we're doing attractive, magnetic for the next generation? In the U.S., like much of the world, the average farmer is now 60 years old. So in the next 15 years, half of all America's agriculture equity will change hands. Land, buildings, and equipment. In a business sector, any business sector in which the average practitioner is more than 35 years old, that is an economic sector in decline. We're a long ways from 35 in farming. And so we desperately need models that allow a young person to get in, because the problem is when a young person can't get in, an old person can't get out. So both generations are stuck, one on the exit ramp and one on the entrance ramp. And so to me, the ultimate regenerative aspect is about creating models that the young generation can get in. So on our farm, what we've done, and on our farm we have about 22 salaries generated from the farm. And the average age of our farmers on our place at Polyface is about 32. I'm the old geezer. If you don't count my mom, who will be 101 in December. Yeah. And so we have a very young team, and I can't tell you what it does to my soul at this age of life to have a whole cadre of 20-something young people clamoring to do what I do. The average farmer my age is more lonely than they've ever been in their life. The children are gone, aches and pains are more, the energy is waning, and they're feeling left by society and alone. And so to be energized by all of these young people is truly, truly one of the greatest blessings of my life. And it has come because I'm very optimistic about our farm. I'm enthusiastic about our farm because I have watched it heal over my lifetime. I've watched rocks, solid rock areas where 3 to 5 feet of topsoil had washed off over 150 years of grain farming tillage. And I've watched those rocks get soil built back up on them just by regenerative processes. The soil is the most valuable thing probably in any civilization. In fact, most civilizations have risen and fallen on the basis of their soil. If you read some of the early Roman history data from farming in Rome, in Italy, the numbers, the production numbers, unless their pounds were very different than ours, their production numbers are absolutely mind-boggling. It's hard for us to appreciate what was here and what has been lost. In North America, more food was produced 500 years ago than is produced today, even with John Deere tractors, hybrid seeds, and chemical fertilizer. More food was produced 500 years ago than is produced today. That should give us pause, and we should realize maybe we'd better go back to the patterns rather than abuse them, disrespect them, and adulterate them. So civilizations move. They accelerate on good soil. People find a new place and then generally exploit it until it's gone, and then the civilization collapses. Soil is the foundation for everything that we see. It's more important than money. It's more important than banks. It's more important than retirement plans. It's the foundation for everything we see. The wood that we stand on, the food that we eat, everything is based on the soil. The banks can fail. Cars can fail. The energy grid can fail. All of those we can probably live without. We have for a long time, you know. But if the soil fails, we're gone. Soil is nature's carbon sink. And I don't want to go down to a rabbit hole of climate change and greenhouse gases and all that. I will just say that I think in general, our problem is not carbon. Our carbon problem is a soil carbon problem. Our problem is we've moved our soil carbon to the atmosphere, and we're not generating the carbon in the soil. In fact, all we would have to do, in North America at least, is increase our organic matter in our soil 1% on our farmland, and it would draw down enough carbon to return us to atmospheric carbon numbers that were pre-industrial. On our farm, in 60 years, we've gone from 1% organic matter average to today 8.2% average organic matter. Now, I know organic matter and carbon are not identical, but they're kissing cousins. So if we can increase organic matter, we're in good shape. The fact is, if we did even just 1%, not 7% like we've done, but 1% across farmland, we would draw down that atmospheric carbon. Soil is important because it's the hydration regulator. 1% of organic matter holds 20,000 gallons of water per acre. And I'm sorry I'm using acres. You can do your hectares on your own time, but I just didn't have enough time to do all the changes. But 1% organic matter holds 20,000 gallons of water per acre. We've moved 7 percentage points, which means today we can hold 140,000 gallons of water. I think I figured that up today. It was like 2 million liters per hectare of water that we couldn't hold in 1961 when our family came to the farm. That's amazing on the shoulders of droughts and floods. It means that there's much more resilience in that soil. It's the regulator of hydration. One of the most, I think, vivid imaginary pictures for me is I picture the soil like a cathedral. Healthy soil is like a cathedral. When you go into a cathedral, the remarkable thing about a cathedral is not the architecture, it's the space. And healthy soil is like a cathedral. It's actually a lot of empty space because it's fluffy. It's not hard and packed together. And those rooms are all full, half full of water. And all these microbes is like a big wetland swamp. And all these microbes are sloshing around in these big cathedral rooms. And this really came to me several years ago. We were in a drought, very, very dry. And we suddenly had 3 inches, 75 mils of rain in a shower one night. So I jump on the four-wheeler and I go up to one of our high ponds to see the water come in. Nothing's coming in. I go up the next day, dry, nothing coming in. I go up the next day, dry, nothing coming in. The third day I go up, water's running in the pond. It took 3 days for the water, all that 3 inches of water to trickle down through the cathedral into the spaces and finally come out the valley. Isn't that cool? That's how much water capacity there is in the soil. The soil is mystical. You know, right now, the world, we only have cataloged and named 10% of the soil microbes. You know, there are more microbes in one handful of healthy soil than there are people on the planet. Think about that for a moment. And 90% are unnamed and unknown. And yet, our expert agronomists in our industrial, governmental, I won't say any more adjectives, complex, they wade into the soil as like a bunch of exploitive conquistadors to place their, we claim this in the name of the Queen, and they have no idea what they're doing or what they're talking about. Just like the ones that told us for 30 years to feed dead cows to cows. Actually, the soil is like an amazing, another word picture for you. We have a cathedral, all right? All that cathedral too, you know what's going on around there? It's like an underground trading cafe. So Stanford University has now isolated the language of microbes. And our gut, in our microbiome, they have now isolated the language that these microbes, they talk to each other. So I liken this, I think the soil is something like that cafe in Star Wars where Luke Skywalker goes in. He's looking for a fast spaceship, and he runs into Han Solo. And over on the band deck, you know, there's these people, these aliens, space creatures, whatever, playing. You know, one's got 2 heads. You know, and I view the soil as that kind of trading. I've got a little molybdenum. You got some boron for me? Hey, I got some polysaccharides from the root exudates. I'll trade you for some, you know, from zinc. And this is an underground cafe going on. It's mystical. It's magical. It's beyond our imagination. We know some about it, but we don't know a lot about it. It's mystical. How do we build soil? We build soil several ways. One is with perennials rather than annuals. Soil is all built with perennials, not annuals. The energy cycle in an annual is essentially soil extractive because it's putting all of that energy into some fruit, blossom, berry, something that is coming out of that soil. A perennial puts most of its energy into root context because it has to handle droughts and floods and cold and heat, and those roots have to stay there implanted so that they don't die. And so the energy cycle of a perennial is into the soil, the energy cycle of an annual is out of the soil. But what do all of our subsidies encourage? At least in the U.S., the six things that we get agriculture subsidies for, I know you get a lot more subsidies in Europe. We only get them for 6 things. They're all annuals. So our entire farm subsidy encouragement policy, incentivization policy, is to deplete energy in the soil, not increase energy in the soil. So that means that what we want is an agriculture that is dominated by perennials, and annuals are kind of a secondary thing. Historically, before chemical fertilizers, 7-year rotations were common. 5 years of pasture, 2 years of cropping, because it took the perennial forages and the grasses with the herbivores to replace the energy that 2 years of cropping took away. So these these very wonderful animal crop rotations were important. And it also means that we would go to rotational grazing. So most of the perennials on the planet are overgrazed by overgrazing livestock. But if you look at native species, whether it's the bison that aren't there anymore in the American plains, or today the wildebeest on the Serengeti, what you see moving, they're mobbing, they're tight because of predators, and they're mowing, they're pruning. And so moving the animals, we move ours every day to a new paddock, and that allows rest periods so that the perennial can grow up and get its full complement. We call this mob stocking, herbivorous solar conversion, lignified sequestration, fertilization. I always like to see what the translators do with that. So the building soil, first thing is perennials. Number 2 is it runs on carbon, not chemicals. 10-10-10 chemical fertilizer never built any soil. Soil is built by carbon decomposing. Even the mineralization, think about this. People, well, don't you ever even buy, no, we don't buy minerals. Why? Well, because if this glass of water here were a rock, and I set it up here, a rock from out there, and we want to know how much boron, zinc, molybdenum, and cobalt is in that rock, we could treat it with sulfuric acid, prussic acid, hydrochloric acid. But the most efficacious acid that we could treat it with to break out the minerals is an acid called carbonic acid. Where does carbonic acid come from? Well, when organic matter, when vegetable material, manure and leaves and debris decomposes in the soil, as it rots and decomposes, a gas comes off of it. What gas? Carbon dioxide. All right. Are we back to our underground cathedral? Our wet, watery cathedral? As this gas percolates up through this cathedral and encounters H2O, CO2 plus H2O, guess what it makes? Carbonic acid. Is that not cool? So God created this and put into our soils the capacity to break out the minerals from the rocks. So our mineral depletion is not because we're mineral deprived, it's because we're decomposition deprived. I'm always fascinated by the fact that a piece of vegetation, a blade of grass, a weed, a piece of wood, but when it's vegetation, 95% of it is sunlight. Only 5% is soil. That's incredible. Building soil takes animals. Animals, yes, especially herbivores. So this afternoon I did a little bit of computations, and I figured up that on our farm where we run cows at 400 cow days per acre. Don't get stuck on the acres. I'm going to give it to you in kilograms per hectare, believe it or not. I did the computations. Here's the deal. They're eating 22,000 kilograms per hectare. They're pooping 40,000 kilograms per hectare. And they're taking off in meat and bone and flesh 1,200 kilograms per hectare. That is why the inefficiency of herbivores is the key to building soil. That's why all the deepest, best soils on the planet are not under forests. And it's not like I don't like forests. They're not under bushes. It's not like I don't like bushes. They're under perennial prairies with herbivores. Because the inefficiency of an herbivore is what heals the soil. They're giving back way more than they take. If herbivores were as efficient as pumpkins and squash and green beans, we wouldn't have any soil. And that's why the ancient rotations were so critical, because it took those 4 to 5 years of perennials to build back what the extractive annuals took. So animals are a critical factor. Animals are also the way we democratize fertility. Without animals, fertility naturally moves from high ground to low ground through gravity. You know, the minerals, the twigs and leaves, and it moves downhill. And so in nature, typically, the animals come and they graze in the valleys where all the fertility generates. But where do they go to digest? They go back up on the hillside so they can watch out and see if the wolves, the coyotes, the bears, the lions, whatever, is coming after them. So they poop and they pee up on the hillside, up on the top, so gravity can bathe the hillside with their manure and urine. Animals are the ultimate democratized fertility program of nature. Isn't that cool? These things are made like this. And in fact, I would suggest that animals even are like a compost pile on steroids. Composting, and we do a lot of composting at our farm, but it can be a little bit tricky. You know, it's got to have the right C/N ratio, it's got to have the right microbes, right temperature, right moisture, all those kind of things. But boy, when biomass goes into a chicken or a cow or a pig, you know, an animal, what takes 8 weeks to do in a compost pile happens in 24 hours in an animal. And the temperature's always right, the moisture's always right, the microbes are always right. Is that not cool? I call an animal a compost pile on steroids. So animals are an amazing real-time catalyst for building soil. Another way to build soil is with compost. So we integrate the forest with the open land. It's not forest over here, open land over here, one management plan for this, one. No, they're integrated. The forest is a biomass, and so we work in the forest, weeding out the dead stuff, the crooked stuff, the poor things. I'm a permaculture believer. We need more forest and fewer trees. We have weedy trees. We have single species trees. So let's diversify the forest stock. Let's open it up, give the trees a little bit of room to grow, a little bit of light to move forward, and fully capitalize their potential, and use the chips from that, or the material, as what we call a carbonaceous bedding for when we're housing livestock in the wintertime. In the summer, all of our animals are outside. They move every day to fresh pasture: chickens, turkeys, pigs, ducks, lambs, cows. But in the winter, normally they're in, and for 100 days during the winter, then there's snow and all that, and they have a carbonaceous diaper made by these chips from the forest. We build soil with hydration. P.A. Yeomans, the Australian guru who wrote Water for Every Farm in 1950-ish, You know, he said that every farm should aspire to eliminate surface water runoff and never end a drought with a full pond. So surface runoff, 1/3 of all raindrops become surface runoff because they come too fast for absorption, or there's already saturation in the soil and it's too much. And so the surface runoff comes off. By definition, surface runoff only happens when the commons is full. The cup of the commons is full, it fills up and it runs over. So when you impound surface runoff, and Joseph Holzer's here, I think, somewhere. I hope I'm speaking your language, Joseph. When you impound surface runoff, you're not stealing from people downhill. You're actually protecting them from floods. You're doing your neighbors a neighborly service by protecting them from floodwaters, from surface runoff. And then you know what you do? During a drought, you can use that to irrigate and keep your earthworms, your actinomycetes, your azotobacter, your mycelium, your gibberellins. You can keep them functional in soil moisture and preserve subflow and springs for your neighbors downhill and for the soil biology. Another way to build soil is to diversify the microbial community and keep your bacteria and fungi in balance, and there's nothing that does that better than using wood-based carbon in your compost. So you feed worms, and you feed the soil biology. You know, worms, earthworms, you know, it's amazing. We still don't know how in the world they do this. How does a worm eat 1 kilogram of material, and through its alimentary canal, it poops out the same kilogram of material? And what it poops out is 3 times the calcium, 7 times the phosphorus, and 11 times the potassium of what it took in, and it didn't reduce the number, the weight. Nobody knows how he does that. I don't know. Nobody knows. It's pretty cool, though. What are the implications of this? Very quickly, what are the implications of all this? I would say, first of all, the implication is that the invisible world is more real than the visible. The invisible world is more real than the visible. What's going on in the soil is actually more valuable and more real than what we see. Just like what's going on in our microbiome is more important than what we see. The rash that we see, the wound that we see, the arm that we see, the whatever it is, the sickness or whatever it is that we see that we can measure is only symptomatic of the health of the microbiome. It's what's going on inside of us that's the real thing, not what's going on outside of us. It's what's going on inside of us. The invisible is more real than the visible. Another implication is, fortunately, healing is possible. Healing is possible. I just told you how much organic matter our farm had. I can tell you as a child, you know, the first thing the farm child gets to do is rake hay. On equipment, rake hay. The mower, it's a little bit touchy. The baler is really touchy. And so when you're 12, 13 on a farm and you've got a small tractor, go rake hay, boy. And so you can go rake, because you just go in circles, you know. It's real easy. And I can well remember as a 13-year-old starting to rake hay and remembering I had to count 16 rake swaths, they're 10 feet wide, 16 rake swaths to make one anemic windrow. Today, 2 swaths make a windrow that you can't jump over. That's not bragging. That's simply paying humble appreciation and homage and gratitude to the fact that soil is a living thing and it can be healed. It is not an inanimate something. It is a biological living thing. And our problem today is that our agriculture orthodoxy views life as a fundamentally mechanical, inanimate object and not a thinking, relational, biological community. That's our problem. So it's a living thing. The difference between living things and non-living things is living things can heal. And boy, can't we be thankful for that. Whether it's a wound on our hand, a sickness that we have, or an unfit word spoken to a spouse that we have to ask forgiveness for, and we can be forgiven and healed, and we can go right on. That's a powerful, powerful reality. It can be healed. The hurt can be mended. The fact that healing is possible has lots of ramifications. We participated in a study in the U.S. They wanted to look at pastured eggs versus regular, confinement, conventional eggs. And so 12 of us in the country, we submitted our pastured eggs to a lab. And the official USDA label, you get a nutrition label on an egg carton. The official label says I'll just pick one, 48 micrograms of folic acid per egg. That's the official, that's what's in an egg, 48 micrograms of folic acid per egg. Folic acid is really important, especially for pregnant ladies. Our eggs, what did I tell you? How many was it? 48, thank you. Wow, somebody's listening, good. Our eggs averaged 1,038 micrograms per egg, okay? This is not a 10% deviation. This is like not even the same product, all right? Grass-finished beef has 300% more riboflavin than grain-finished beef. What's the importance of riboflavin? Riboflavin is known as the calming fatty acid. Why do people go nuts today? They don't get enough riboflavin because all their meat is short of riboflavin. These things are real, okay? And so healing is possible. That's a fantastic implication for our microbiome and the soil. Next, the implication is that disturbance and rest cycles are very important. We call this ecological exercise, okay? We have this notion today that the only way to interact correctly with nature is to abandon it. We have what I call environmentalism by abandonment. And so if you study how we humans generally have interacted with the ecology, it's not a pretty picture. And most of us, if we care and we're thinking, we want to repent in sackcloth and ashes for all our predecessors have done. Okay? I get it. I've done it. Let's do it. But then the answer is not, okay, then we can't touch nature. The only way to interact is to abandon people, lock it up in wilderness areas and national parks, and you can't do this, and you can't put pigs in a forest, and we've got to get people out. These hands that have hurt can also heal if we take a totally different tack. And so this moves us to a place where we start to exercise the ecology, and we do remediation, and we massage nature as a lover to undo the exploitive rape that we've been doing for a long time. And it's time to do that now. This means that we're looking, part of this is to bring on diversity in the biological community. The Bionutrient Food Association has done some yeoman's work now, looking at 150 nutrients in beef. They've done it for carrots, they've done it for broccoli. What they found is a huge variety of nutrient density from one carrot to another, one broccoli to another, one T-bone steak to another. And it's not along the lines that you would think of. It doesn't break along the lines of organic or not, or biodynamic or not. It doesn't break along those lines. It breaks along very different lines. In beef, it breaks along the line of how many different plants did the cow eat? That's the single thing that determines bionutrient diversity, the density, the nutrient density. How many different things did the animal eat? Unfortunately, most of our animals, most of our beef animals for sure, and dairy for sure, don't get much diversity now. But what we want is a lot of diversity for them. Another implication of this soil development is that we want to develop resilience, and we can develop resilience in it, like the water in organic matter. If soil is healthy and good, it's like a cathedral. Another way to look at it is like a real velvety, fluffy chocolate cake. Okay? What makes a chocolate cake good? Well, it's got a lot of air in it, softness. Air, water, carbon, all right? Building ponds so that we can irrigate in drought times. Making the soil, all of this makes soil less prone to shocks. And there are a few things that are as enjoyable as when all the neighbor farmers are complaining about rain, complaining about no rain, and we've got 20 ponds that hold all this surface runoff from winter snowfall and overage rains early in the spring. And in July and August, we can go out there and irrigate, and we're just green and lush because grass vegetation never grows as well as it does in a drought because there are no clouds in the sky and it's hot. And so in a drought, the conditions are never better to grow if the soil has moisture. And so we can build resilience into it. We're all about trying to build resilience. And the same thing is true as we connect our microbiome to the soil, is building resilience in our microbiome. Finland now leads the world in connecting connection to soil to the microbiome, especially in children. And they've documented over and over how infants on a farm that eat dirt are far more immune than their city cousins who are sterilized to death. And it makes me think what we need is a new business for farmers to build little permeable balls or mats or something to sell to city people, on a subscription basis. Every quarter we'll come and we'll replace the dirt in it. You can come in and you can pump, you can hit your kids' heads with this, and you can, get some good farm soil on them to keep them running. So we can build resilience in our immune system just like we can build resilience in our soil systems. Another implication is integration versus segregation. We don't want segregated systems, we want integrated systems. The forest and open lands to deal with the biomass. We want animals to be a blessing and not a curse. The problem is with animals cooped up in a building all the time, the excrement that they produce so overruns the local ecology that it becomes a curse instead of a blessing. It's common, for example, in the Netherlands. I don't want to get down into a too partisan hole here, but I can tell you that it's not uncommon to meet a dairy couple in the Netherlands. They've got 100 milk cows. You say, well, how much land do you have? Well, 10 acres. Folks, you can't have 100 milk cows on 10 acres and have any kind of ecological balance. These things you can't compartmentalize. It all has to work together in balance. So imagine if we were so interested in integration like this that a banker, before loaning a business loan, dared to ask, what do you think this will do to the earthworm population in our community? But boy, wouldn't that put a different twist on what we do. In fact, I would suggest that our businesses need to be, if we actually put this kind of emphasis on our businesses, if businesses were bounded by ecology, they would be less stressful and more sacred. And that's one of the things we cultivate at our farm with our young people that are there is we're not just producing chickens. We're not just producing eggs. This is a sacred calling, a sacred ministry in which we come along as collaborators with the Creator to steward and give back more than we got. Another implication is stewardship is my responsibility. My soil is my responsibility. I don't care what government programs reward. I don't even know where the government offices are. I don't get any subsidies. Nothing. It's all about what I do. What will my actions look like? What will my actions create 100 years from now? If I kept doing this every year for 100 years, what would my landscape look like? That's the legacy we want to build. And for those who aren't farming, I would suggest that the question is what I'm eating today building the landscape I want my grandchildren to inherit? So imagine you're looking at your plate of food, you squint your eyes, and you look through the plate of food to the landscape that produced that food and ask the question, is this the landscape I want my grandchildren to inherit? On my tombstone, I want it written, he built soil. That's the legacy. Another implication is that we can eat happiness. Oh boy, now I've gone clear off the reservation. No, let me tell you this. What we've learned from the many chefs that we service over the years is that all of our meat and poultry cooks in about 15%, sometimes 20% less time than the conventional. How can that be? We've asked and asked and asked, and the only thing that we can come up with is they're not secreting adrenaline. What happens when you secrete adrenaline? Your muscles tighten up. I mean, that's how a 50-kilo mom can pick up a car off of her toddler. Okay, what happens? Your muscles are tight. All right, and when animals are fed an artificial diet and kept in artificial conditions and in social sizes that are stressful to them all their life, they're drip, 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 drip adrenaline. And they come to that final day of slaughter all tightened up. Our animals have lived a wonderful, happy life, no stress, no adrenaline drips. And they come to that final day as a sacred sacrifice, not a sacrilege sacrifice, because they've been respected and honored in their lifetime, because we care whether the pig can enjoy their pigness. I would suggest that when we don't ask, how do we make sure that we have a habitat that allows the pig to fully express its own glory of pigness, very quickly, it's not a long step to stop asking, how do we allow Tom to express his Tomness and Mary her merriness? It's the ethical and moral framework we hang around our food production that gives us an ethical, moral foundation for everything else in life. The truth is that my mouth is the gateway to my microbiome's knowledge of the world outside. The soil microorganisms and my microbiome, they're related. They're kissing cousins. And I like to think about my microbiome in here. They're sitting and they're watching stuff come down, come down the pipe. Oh, there's old Uncle Leo, Oh, there's Aunt Judith, And I haven't seen them for a long, it's some actinomycetes or, mycelium or whatever. And they're coming down. Hey, how are you doing? How's the world outside? And I would ask you, is my microbiome, when its microbial cousins are coming in on our food system, are they learning that the outside world is one to be abused and violated and forced? Or is the outside world something to be embraced, nurtured, and loved? We can eat happiness. And finally, the implication is decomposition is the catalyst for everything. That great circle of life, death, decomposition, regeneration, life, death, decomposition, regeneration. That is the great circle of life. So we want to eat only what will rot. We don't want to eat sterile food. And if you think about our current industrial food system, the cultivars we've chosen, the packaging we've chosen, the food safety regulations we've created, everything is about sterility and shelf life. And when all of your food decisions are about sterility and shelf life, you create cardboard food. And cardboard doesn't feed our microbiome. If you get real cheese and put it up here on the table, in a day it gets all fuzzy. In a week it sprouts legs and walks off the table. But if you get squeezable Velveeta cheese and squirt it on here, you can wash it for a week, 2 weeks, a year, it just sits there. Folks, if it won't rot, it won't digest. Our insides are a unbelievable fast compost pile. Okay? And what we need to feed that compost pile is what will decompose, is what will digest. And I would suggest then that as we look at the soil microbiome connection, what we're actually asking ourselves is this internal community of however many trillion microbes. You know, we are only 15% human. We're 85% non-human. I mean, when I was in high school, I remember well in biology class in 10th grade studying the cell, and the smallest thing in a cell was like, you know, a nucleus in a cell, and that was about all we got. Today, now, we know that there are up to 1,000 mitochondria in one cell. I've watched this understanding of the miniature in my lifetime, and our increasing knowledge about the small. And we're realizing, I think, more and more, aren't we, that it's not about the big, it's about the small. And if we take care of the small, we're good. And so this leads me to realize that our ultimate question is looking, if we could open up our skin and look inside, it's how can I serve you? How can I serve you? What can I do to make your life better, your habitat better? And I would suggest that that becomes then a wonderful umbrella for how we then live. We live with service inside, we live with service outside to each other, and that's how we're healthy and we live. If we can get our eyes off of ourselves and off of just what we want and convenience and ease and start serving our microbiome through the soil with each other, we have a life of service that gives us a legacy that is transformative in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love your energy. Still, you already had this amazing masterclass, then again an interview, and now this presentation. I mean, ladies and gentlemen, this is soil to soul. Thank you, Joel Salatin. Thank you so much.
We'll take some questions. You're very kind.
I'm sure you all have a lot of questions. Who would like to start?
Any question is fine.
Yes,
Here we go.
please.
Have you been experimenting with perennial crops as well?
Perennial crops? No, we haven't. Very short answer. No, we haven't. We buy all of our grains from neighbors, and so we are not cultists about independence. We think that too many farms become fixated on independence and end up blowing their profitability doing things they're not good at or aren't done well on their particular farm. It's much more stable to become mutually interdependent with the love, skills, and ability of of people who complement us where we're weak, or our farms where our farms are weak. Some farms are flat, some farms are hilly, some farms are high elevation, low elevation. There are all different kinds of places. And so just like we have different people, we have different situations on different farms that are more or less conducive to other things. And so mutual interdependence, I think, generally beats singular independence. Yeah.
When do your neighbor farmers actually realize what you do?
Our neighbors have no clue what we do.
When do they
They're
start
wonderful
about...
people. No, I'm not denigrating anybody. They're wonderful people. We wave, we say, but we just live on different, philosophically, we're on different planets. I mean, they call me a bioterrorist. They call me Typhoid Mary, other things. A starvation advocate, because if we all farmed this way, half the world would starve, which means Bill Gates should love it.
Yeah, definitely.
But he doesn't. I don't get that. He wants half the planet to die so we'll survive. Well, if what I do actually would kill half the planet, you'd think he'd be my greatest friend instead of greatest adversary. But such are the anomalies of hypocrisy. Go ahead. Another question.
Please.
You mentioned that the European farmers get quite a substantial amount of subsidies, which is true. You said you don't get any, so you don't need to name numbers, but can you just maybe put the few biggest parts of your income? How do you make money? Is it with meat or selling plant crops, or?
All right, so we're in pasture-based livestock. So right now we have about 1,000 head of cattle. We process about 300 beeves a year. So you've got a pipeline, coming up to maturity. We are doing about 800 hogs, 25,000 broiler chickens, 120,000 dozen eggs. What else? 2,000 turkeys. We have a sawmill. We mill lumber. We sell lumber to people who want lumber, customized lumber. So all in all, and we do events, we do gatherings, we do informational events. We have a lunatic learning center. I'm a lunatic farmer. So the lunatic learning center can seat 400 people, and we do about 6 gatherings a summer for organizations that would rather come there than go to a conference center. And very family friendly, ponds, playground for kids, it's and the best food in the world, which makes people who care about food want to come because they don't have to fight the dining services as to what can come in. So all in all, there are 22 of us that make a living from the farm, and last year we just tipped over by a few $10,000, $4 million in income.
Wow.
Could you run your farm without the events and stuff like this?
Could we run the farm without the events and things like that? Yes, absolutely. In fact, we were farming full-time for 10 years. I came back to the farm full-time September 24, 1982. And my first book was in 1993, Pastured Poultry Profits. I've written now 16 books, but the farm paid for the publishing of the book. Now the books carry their weight, and they've become like a nice little annuity. Anybody that knows about books know that you've got to sell a pile of books to make any money with books. But they were a way that I could get my information out to people and not spend all night on the telephone answering questions. I could say, if you got the book, no, well, get the book and then call me. That gave me a friendly out, all right, to not have to answer all that. But yes, the farm is absolutely a problem. Now, all that said, these other parts, they do take time. I mean, you can't run a 400-person 2-day event with no staff and no people, so So essentially, all of our enterprises have to carry their own weight, and they work symbiotically, complementary rather than competitively. And that's a very important aspect. Yeah.
Joseph Holzer called it brain per hectare.
Yeah.
It's very important to have that too, right?
Yeah, at the seminar this morning, I figured up that on our pasture, we can gross in about, what did I say, $50,000 per hectare. You've got broilers, cows, eggmobiles, Millennium Feathernet, turkeys, lambs, 6 things across, not all on the same day on the same spot, but through the season, and you're stacking these enterprises, which gives you incredible income per hectare. Complementary, yeah.
So if I understand correctly, you're not doing any crops and vegetables. So now that you've built all this wonderful soil, why do you not use it to grow crops or vegetables?
As soon as you come to our farm to run a horticulture program, you're on. But you're not going to be an employee. None of our team members gets paid by the hour. They get paid by performance or salary with bonuses. We don't believe in hourly pay. It automatically makes the payer wonder if he's getting value for the money, and the payee, the worker, feeling unappreciated if they actually go over the expectation. It's very hard to adjust with hourly wages. And so in the past, twice in the last 10 years, we've had somebody who did horticulture as a complementary enterprise. And so our core is pastured livestock. That's our brand, that's our core. But other things, mushrooms, beehives, maple syrup, horticulture, orchard, all of those things can hang around the edges by any team member that wants to do it as a side hustle, taking the risk. Now, we've got a wonderful market that makes marketing very easy for them, but they're going to do the work, decide the price, and take the risk of whether it. I only want to work with people who share risk. Okay? So the answer is, right now we don't have anybody who wants to do the garden as an enterprise. If you want to come and do it, talk to me after, and you're on. Okay? So the farm looks today, when you come and visit today, except for those core things, the core things that are our brand, what we call the mothership, okay? But everything besides the mothership can change from year to year based on the interests of the people that are on our team. And the beauty of that is we don't feel like we had a guy, 2 times we've had people that do shiitake mushrooms. I love shiitake mushrooms. We've got enough wood and oak to make a massive shiitake mushroom deal, okay? But both times when the guy got married, another one, the guy got divorced, okay? But, things change, and they moved. We didn't feel compelled, oh no, what are we going to, we've got to keep the mushrooms up. No, we just, it was an ancillary, nice little thing over here, and we just don't do it anymore. If you want to come and do mushrooms, we'll do mushrooms, okay? So the farm can morph based on the interests and talents of the people on our team at a given time. And man, is that freeing from us scrambling, oh no, what are we going to do about this? No, if somebody wants to pick it up, great. If they don't, it's there for another day for another person.
And I guess you have a lot of people who want to come and work with you.
We do, but it's amazing how few people want to take risk.
Yeah.
Most people want a guarantee. And as soon as I say, give me a plan and show me your business plan, how are you going to earn your living? We'll do everything. We've got equipment, we've got expertise, we've got compost, we've got market, give me your plan. Oh, you're not going to, no, we're not going to guarantee you anything. You make it, and we'll guarantee you a cheerleader community, you know. All right? We'll help you that way, but ultimately it's going to be your business. What we want are entrepreneurs. We want to attract entrepreneurs. We don't want to attract time clock pushers.
My question is it possible to grow vegetables as a regenerative agriculture?
Is it possible to grow vegetables in regenerative agriculture?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. But it becomes a lot easier if you incorporate animals. So one of the prettiest, neatest little farms I ever saw was 12 acres. It'd be what, 5.5 hectares in Arizona. 5.5 hectares. They did vineyard, but they spaced the vines out far enough that that they could get chicken shelters down, portable chicken shelters down through in between. And so they did 3 years of pasture and chickens, and then they did 1 year of vegetables, and then 1 year of garlic. Garlic is not a heavy feeder, so it could kind of clean up, and then back into pasture. They did this beautiful 5-year rotation between the vineyard, and the beauty of that was that because they spaced the vineyard, the vines out about 3 times as far as normal, or twice as far as a normal vineyard, they didn't have any of the molds or fungi or scab and issues that normal people have in a vineyard that they spray for, because a normal vineyardist, the only way they can justify this hectare of land is with one crop. So they got to smush it up real close to increase the productivity on that one little spot, rather than having 5 income streams from that spot, so that none of the individual enterprises overruns the ecological balance of the hectare. Does that make sense? And so that was, and then they also added some pecans and English walnut trees up every few meters in the vineyard, open canopied nut trees. So they had the stackable, they had the nut trees up high, then the vineyard, then the vegetables, chickens, it was. So yes, you can absolutely do it, but it's very difficult without the incorporation of some sort of perennial / livestock component in a rotation.
Yes, please.
Just asking, did I understand it right? You buy in the grain, the
Yes.
food for your poultry from your neighbors who don't know about regenerative agriculture?
No, the people that we buy grain from, it's all GMO free, no GMOs, and there's no glyphosate. Our mill, the mill that we use, is completely GMO free, and they test every incoming batch of grain for glyphosate residue. That's way higher than organic. Organic doesn't do that. And so we feel real good about the relationships that we have with the local farmers. Some of them could be certified organic. Most of them don't want to be. They're Amish, so they don't want to deal with government programs, just like I don't. And so that's fine, but we know who they are. We can go visit. We know their integrity. And again, growing grain, it's hard to grow a little bit of grain. Growing grain is like being a little bit pregnant. You either are or you aren't, And so if you're going to be in the grain business, you'd better get in the grain business. And we don't want to be in the grain business. Our farm was destroyed by being in the grain business for 150 years. That's why we didn't have any soil, and we had gullies, 5 meters deep gullies, because of grain. We're upland. We're a lot more ridgy, and so we get our grain from people downhill, bringing the grain uphill to match the old animal cycle of bringing the valleys up to the ridge tops.
I'm interested in the water management of your pastures. If I understood right, you created ponds to keep them green in summertime. can you say what's the ratio of meter cube for meter square, meter cube water for meter square pasture, or? And for
Okay.
how many dry days in summer? I don't know the climate exactly.
Yeah, so we get about 750 mil a year of rainfall, and normally we have at least one drought either in the spring, summer, or fall. Normally we don't have droughts in the winter. You know, we don't have, the grass doesn't grow in the winter, but we normally have at least one. And when I say a drought, I mean 6 weeks with no rain. For us, that's a drought. Now in Nevada, they wouldn't consider that a drought at all. Okay, but they have adapted species to run on 100 mil of rain a year. All right, but where we are, the vegetation, the plants, the ecology that we're in wants about 750 mil of rain a year. All right, so. So what we try to do is we never get done building ponds. I'll build ponds till I die, and I hope Daniel keeps building them when I'm gone, okay? We just keep, every time we get a little bit of cash, we build ponds. But what we try to do, we try to have enough water where we can irrigate to where we can get about 150 mil of water in a month on the acreage. That's what we're looking for. And if we can get 150 mil of water in maybe 3 applications, 50 mil per application, I think I'm about right. 25 mil per inch. I think I'm about right. Somebody, no, I'm getting some nods. I've done this enough. I think I might be off just a smidgen, but anyway, if you can do that, if you can get 50 mil every 2 weeks for why we're all falling apart in here. If you can get 50 mil every 2 weeks for 6 weeks in a drought, it can grow another complete cycle of whatever it is that you're growing. It's that remarkable. Which of course then means you can get another grazing off of it, which adds another batch of manure and urine, and more root hairs. It makes it go. Yeah.
Hey Joel, thank you so much for inspiring us. And we spoke also in the morning, and you just told us again, your neighbors, they are not practicing regenerative agriculture and must frustrate you and also impact your farm. So I wonder, what are best practices to inspire farmers towards regenerative agriculture or more resilient systems for the future? Because you look around your farms and you showed us the photos in the morning, and like it looks devastating. And like, how do we motivate other farmers?
I'll never forget my dad, who went to a neighbor after our confidence level went way up. That's what we were seeing. He went to our adjacent neighbor over and told him that one day our farm would have 100 cows. At that time we had 15. And the neighbor laughed him to scorn. He came home completely devastated and depressed. And I remember him very well saying, I will never again tell somebody what I'm going to do. I'm just going to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think that what we desperately need, we need shining lights of examples. Our world is starving for successful prototypes. And our problem is that we don't have very many truly standalone, fully functional, successful prototypes. We just don't. And the fact that I'm so popular, there should be hundreds of me, thousands of me. And so, I mean, I'm glad to be here, don't get me wrong, but I'm trying to inspire and encourage a whole generation. We need successful prototypes. And so, Dad always said, he said, you can't push on a string. You have to pull on a string. Okay? And so for me, the fact that the neighbors don't get it, it's fine. It's a big world out there. It doesn't frustrate me. It doesn't worry me. It just is what it is, and they'll get it when they want to see it. You know, we have this saying, "I'll believe it when I see it." Actually, that's not true. Actually, you'll see it when you believe it, because your heart, your paradigm, your worldview, the way you see, is a filter to what your head can believe.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you once again for coming to Soul, Joel Salatin. Big
Thank you
round
for
of
having me.
applause.
Now, I do my blessing. Turn it. Can you turn the mic back on? Because I always end this way. I'm known as the blessing guy, all right? So now may all of your carrots grow long and straight. May your radishes be large but not pithy. May tomato blossom end rot affect your Monsanto neighbor's tomatoes. May the coyotes, well, the wolves here, I understand, be struck blind at your pastured chickens. May all of your culinary experiments be delectably palatable. May the rain fall gently on your fields, the wind be always at your back, your children rise and call you blessed, and may we all make our nest a better place than we inherited. God bless you. Thank you so much. And if you can get to the U.S., come and see us. Blessings on you. Thank you.